We're used to thinking of the moon as a place we've already been. The flag, the footprints, the return trip. But the Artemis program isn't Apollo 2.0. Last time, it was a sprint. We camped in a tent for 3 days. Now we're going to build a city. Why? Not for the rocks. The moon is our insurance policy. It is the seed of humanity, cast into the void to survive a catastrophe on Earth. And it is the proving ground for Mars, because the mistakes we make here would be a death sentence on Mars. We're no longer landing compact capsules. We're landing a 15-story building. But gigantism has a price. Starship burns all its propellant just reaching Earth orbit. To get to the moon, it needs refueling right there in space. It's logistical hell. We need to launch 15 tanker rockets in succession. Liquid methane and oxygen boil in vacuum, evaporating every second. If even one tanker fails to launch or docking goes wrong, the mission is scrubbed. The crew waiting in orbit will be forced to return home without ever touching the moon. At the equator where the Apollos landed, the sun was high. But here, at the South Pole, it's always at the horizon. Shadows are infinite. The human eye sees simply black voids, impossible to tell if it's a pit 1 meter deep or 1 kilometer. The human brain cannot judge distance in these conditions. Landing the ship manually is suicide. The math is simple. Your reaction time plus the response of massive engines. That's nearly a second. And time until impact with a sudden boulder. 3 seconds. You have no margin for error. So, the pilots sit silent with folded hands. The crew's lives depend entirely on the TRN system. An old but reliable processor and laser lidars see what the eye cannot, heat and shape in darkness. The Raptor engines are 50 times more powerful than those on Apollo. If we land on them at the surface, they'll dig a grave beneath the ship or blast wave will destroy sensors. We'll create an artificial hurricane of shrapnel flying for kilometers, damaging everything around. Maneuvering thrusters engage. We descend into a cloud of our own dust. Cameras go blind. We're flying on instruments, cutting through this fog with LiDAR. Impact. Silence. We're on the moon, but we're still trapped. Last time, Armstrong descended a ladder 3 meters long. Here, it's 40 meters to the ground. You can't jump even in weak gravity. The only way down is an elevator, a mechanism exposed to space cold and dust. If the motor ceases, the crew will be locked in the sky above the moon. We have a manual winch, but cranking it in a spacesuit takes 40 minutes. Will the oxygen last? This is the first survival test, and we haven't even taken the first step yet. We journeyed to the South Pole chasing a promise. Scientists called these places peaks of eternal light, but the moon's physics is unforgiving. Eternal light doesn't exist. Even at the most ideal location, on the rim of Shackleton Crater, the sun disappears. And when it does, it's not simply darkness. It's a deep freeze. Ahead lies 354 hours of darkness. That's 14 Earth days. Without an atmosphere to retain heat, the temperature plummets to minus 180 degrees Celsius. If we haven't solved the energy equation, the base will become a tomb before the sun returns. Instinct says, store energy in batteries, like in a phone. But let's do the math. To survive 14 days of lunar night without freezing, we need 170 tons of lithium-ion batteries. Delivering that mass to the moon costs nearly $1 billion. It's economic suicide. Solar panels are useless in shadow. There are no wind turbines to deploy here. We're in the position of a submarine that's settled on the ocean floor. The only salvation is to bring the sun with us. That's kilopower. A pocket nuclear reactor generating 10 kilowatts. It's brilliant simplicity. There are no pumps that can fail. Liquid sodium circulates through the pipes on its own, carrying uranium's hellish heat 800 degrees Celsius to the engines. The Stirling engine simply breathes this heat, converting it into electricity. And Tirizo fuel is ceramic that's impossible to melt even in an accident. This heart will beat for 10 years, keeping us warm until the sun returns. There's another path. Turn water into a battery. During the day, we use excess sunlight to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. At night, we reverse the process. In fuel cells, the gases recombine, returning electricity and the same water. An infinite cycle, but it requires storing gases under monstrous pressure 350 bars. One microcrack, one hydrogen leak, and the energy reserve for the night vanishes into the vacuum. Even if it's warm inside, outside, it's minus 170 Celsius. A temperature swing of 300 degrees between day and night is torture for materials. The base sings, metal contracts, the structure groans and creaks. If engineers haven't accounted for expansion joints like on bridges, the hull will simply rupture. Right now, vacuum works like a thermos, preserving our heat. But if the thermal control system makes one mistake and leaves radiators open, space will suck the life out of the station in a matter of hours. The light returned, but it woke the primary enemy: dust. On Earth, wind and water spend millennia rounding grains of sand into smooth spheres. Here, there is no erosion. Every dust particle is a microscopic shard of glass with razor edges. It isn't just sharp. Solar radiation charges it with static electricity. It levitates, rising above the surface, clinging to everything like a magnet. You cannot brush it off. It cuts through suit layers, destroys airlock seals, and fills lungs, causing silicosis. Apollo astronauts detected a gunpowder smell inside the cabin. That was the scent of their equipment dying. How do you defeat an enemy that's everywhere? Cover it. We tried Earth-based solutions, Kerades, polymer adhesives for landing pads. But in vacuum, the water in the mixture flash vaporizes instantly. Adhesives don't work. The solution came from the kitchen: microwaves. Lunar regolith contains abundant free iron. Under a magnetron beam, it superheats in an instant, fusing dust into a solid road. We're not building roads from concrete. We're melting the moon itself, turning the surface into one massive glass shield. There's no atmosphere here, and no magnetic field. We are exposed to galactic cosmic rays, particles traveling at a significant fraction of the speed of light. Instinct says, build thick metal walls. But that's a trap. The aluminum paradox. When a heavy metal is struck by a particle, it acts as a target, fragmenting into secondary neutrons. Radiation levels inside such a bunker would be higher than outside. The best shielding is hydrogen, water, or polyethylene. That's why we sleep inside walls filled with water. Background radiation kills over years. The sun can kill in a day. When a solar flare erupts, a surge of protons races toward us. We have just 30 minutes before the wave washes over the moon. The entire base becomes a lethal zone. The only chance is the storm shelter, a cramped chamber at the heart of the station, packed with food and water. You sit there for days, listening to exterior sensors screaming data off the charts. Vacuum makes materials behave strangely. On Earth, metal is coated with a layer of oxidation. Here, if you scratch a component, exposing bare metal, and press it against another surface, cold welding occurs. A nut fuses to a bolt. A hatch welds itself to an airlock. The metal believes it is one continuous piece. Every movement here is a struggle not just against dust and cold, but against matter itself, operating under an entirely different set of rules. Why can't we just haul supplies like we do to the ISS? Because the math is against us. Delivering 1 liter of water to the lunar surface costs as much as a new car. A lunar base is a budget black hole. 80% of the mass we drag through space is consumables, water and air. If we depend on resupply, the base goes bankrupt in a month, or dies of thirst if one cargo ship explodes on the pad. We must stop being tourists and start mining local resources. We came to the South Pole for water, But it's not a lake. It's dirty ice, frozen into rock, buried in eternal darkness. The concentration is negligible. 5 kilograms of water per ton of regolith. To fill a bathtub, you need to shovel dump trucks worth of dirt. We don't drill wells. We bake the regolith, forcing the ice to sublimate and capture the vapor. The energy cost is astronomical. Every sip of local water is paid for in kilowatts of nuclear power. But what if there isn't enough ice? Lunar regolith is 40% oxygen by weight. We use hydrogen reduction. Simply put, we burn rock and hydrogen, tearing oxygen away from metal. It's dirty, high-temperature chemistry, but it gives us air. The base takes a breath. For the first time in history, we're breathing air we didn't bring with us. This is the moment independence is born. Our home must weigh no more than 12 tons, the rocket's limit. Metal is too heavy, so we live in an inflatable sphere. This isn't a bouncy castle. This is armor woven from Kevlar and Vectran that becomes harder than concrete under pressure. Engineers wanted to eliminate windows for safety. Psychologists vetoed it. The sapphire porthole is the only thread connecting the crew's sanity to reality in this gray prison. We don't live here year-round yet. 11 months of the year, the base is a flying Dutchman. It sits empty, frozen, unpowered. Zombie mode, waiting for the next crew rotation. The most terrifying moment for a new expedition is opening the hatch. Did the shell survive a year of radiation? Has dust eaten through the seals? The base must be revived before anyone can remove their helmet. There are no cell towers here, no GPS. We're accustomed to instant messaging, but on the moon, the internet works like carrier pigeons. The DTN protocol doesn't require continuous connection. If a satellite drops below the horizon, your message doesn't vanish with an error. It sits in the rover's buffer, waiting for a communications window. An hour, 2 hours, a day. You send "I love you" and know the reply won't arrive until tomorrow. Loneliness here has a physical latency. On Earth, we check our phones to find our way. Here, there's no GPS. No magnetic field for a compass either. The landscape is fractal. A house-sized boulder looks identical to a fist-sized rock because there's no atmospheric haze to provide perspective. We're building our own network. LunaNet. Beacons on peaks, rovers as relay nodes. If you drive beyond the horizon and a beacon fails, you're blind. You could pass within a meter of the base and never see it. A spacesuit isn't clothing. It's a prison. Preparing for an EVA takes 4 hours. Working in one is grueling labor. So we bring our home with us. A pressurized rover. Inside, you can live without suits for weeks, traveling 500 kilometers from base. It doesn't have rubber tires. They disintegrate from cold and radiation. We ride on wheels made of nitinol, a shape memory alloy. It's chainmail that flexes better than any pneumatic tire. On Earth, we throw things away. On the moon, the concept of throwing away doesn't exist. Everything must return to the cycle. The water we drink today was yesterday someone's sweat or urine. The regeneration system wrings moisture even from the air we breathe. Efficiency, 98%. We're drinking the purest water in the universe, but it's psychologically difficult to adjust. As they joke in orbit, today's coffee is tomorrow's coffee. The system is ideal, but not eternal. We lose 2% of our water each cycle. It escapes through airlocks, leaks, and waste. That 2% is a ticking bomb. If we don't replenish it with ice from the craters or resupply from Earth, the tanks will run dry in 6 months. On Earth, drought is a crop problem. Here, water loss means instant death. Without water, there's no oxygen, no radiation shielding, no food. A new race is underway at the South Pole. But this isn't a race for a flag, it's a race of philosophies. The Artemis program is a sprint that became a marathon. It's a complex coalition of nations and private companies. Fast, modular, risky. China's ILRS is playing the long game. They're in no rush with humans. First, they're sending an army of robots to spend years melting rock and building walls. When taikonauts arrive, they won't step into a tent. They'll enter a fortress. The Outer Space Treaty says the moon belongs to everyone, but the Artemis Accords introduce the concept of safety zones. If you're extracting water from Shackleton Crater, you have the right to protect your equipment from neighboring dust clouds. De facto, these are borders. Water is the new oil. It's propellant. Whoever controls the craters with water controls refueling for ships bound for Mars. They hold the keys to the solar system. The greatest threat to the base isn't radiation or meteorites. It's a budget committee back on Earth. A lunar base costs hundreds of billions. If the political winds shift, funding gets cut with one stroke of a pen. For politicians, it's a line item in a budget. For the crew, it's a death sentence. Without spare parts and propellant, the base is doomed to slow extinction. Why are we spending trillions risking lives and breathing dust? Because Earth is the basket holding all of humanity's eggs. One asteroid, one lab accident, one war, and the story ends. The moon is our Noah's Ark, a backup copy of civilization. If the lights go out on Earth, here they'll keep burning. From here, we can start over. Sooner or later, the first child will be born here. They will never be able to live on Earth. 1G gravity would simply crush their bones. They won't be Earthlings. They will be Homo Lunaris, people of the moon. For them, this gray, lethal, airless world won't be a frontier. It will be home. And watching them, we'll understand. We are no longer bound to a single planet. We have become infinite.